We are African, and we happen to be in America.
Malcolm X was born Malcolm Little on May 19, 1925 in Omaha, Nebraska. His father, Earl Little, was an outspoken Baptist minister and supporter of Black nationalist leader Marcus Garvey. The family of 8 children moved a lot because Earl was haunted by the white organization Black Legion. The organization found the family in 1929 and burned their house to the ground. 2 years later, Earl was found killed. After his father was killed, Malcolm's mom got mentally ill and Malcolm got placed in a foster family. He was a good student, but his teacher told him that he could not become a lawyer as he wanted. The teacher said it was not a realistic goal for a nigger. Malcolm felt discriminated by the education system and left the school. Malcolm was involved in a lot of crime after he left the school and ended up with a sentence of 10 years in prison. While in prison, Malcolm became a member of the Nation of Islam. The organization was headed by Elijah Muhammad, which fought for the political and economic empowerment of African Americans. After joining the organization, Malcolm changed his name to Malcolm X. The X symbolizes original name that was changed by his ancestor slave master. Malcolm X became an important person for the Nation of Islam. Malcolm X left the organization in 1964 because he meant that the group was too passive as an organization. He created his own organization called the Organization of Afro-American Unity. The decision gave him a lot of enemies within the organization Nation of Islam. On February 21, 1965, 1 week after his home was firebombed, Malcolm X was shot to death by the Nation of Islam members while speaking at a rally of his new organization in New York City. Malcolm was not a man who believed that the problem of the African Americans would be solved through a peaceful and quiet means. Malcolm gave the African Americans the feeling that they were independent and more powerful by using violence.
Nation of Islam was an African American political and religious movement. Nation of Islam got most of their members for prisons where Afro-Americans looked for guardians. Nation of Islam fought for an equal society where black and white people had the same opportunities. But they didn't want the race mixed. They wanted a society where the black people and the white people were separated. They wanted schools, churches, doctors, and stuff like that for black people only. Malcolm X was a leading spokesperson for Nation of Islam after the founder, Elijah Muhammad, recognized his talents and made him a spokesperson for Nation of Islam and the black people. On Nation of Islam's official webpage, they have 10 main goals for what they want to achieve. Some of them are: 1. We want freedom. We want full and complete freedom. 2. We want justice, equal justice under the law. We want justice applied equally to all, regardless of creed or color or class. They also believe that intermarriage should be prohibited. On their page it says, we believe that intermarriage or race mixing should be prohibited. We want the religion of Islam taught without hindrance or suppression. At last, they want equal but separated educations. We want equal education but separated schools up to 16 for boys and 18 for girls, on the condition that the girls be sent to women's college and universities. We want all black children educated, taught and trained by their own black teachers. In 1963, Malcolm X broke with the group after he found out that the leader Muhammad had had a lot of affairs and fathering several children out of wedlock, which was against the rules. He also got 19 days of suspension from commenting on the Kennedy murder. After those episodes, he began to drift away from the group. Later, he was forced out of the group by original members of Nation of Islam.
I have chosen The Ballad of the Bullet Speed by Malcolm X. Trouble was coming and black people would have to choose their tool toward it. If it wasn't voting, it was fighting. Ballad of the Bullet, it's been word of war. Malcolm X was convinced that voting was the way to change the radical prejudices in the country. He gave the Ballot of the Bullet speech in 1964 to a group of black activists and preachers. He wanted to shed light on the problem that religion was interfering with justice because it distanced people from each other. He believed that religion was personal and that it should be between the individual and God. He meant that people needed to put their religion's beliefs aside when working for equal rights, so that black people could remain united as one. As he talks about being united as one, he mentioned that how important black nationalism and building a community was. Community was if they needed to stand up for the white people's manipulation. He stressed the importance of black people becoming politically intelligent so they can make wise choices about official and only choose people who will help the black community. He felt that the best way for people to become politically intelligent was to rely on one another as members of a large black community to help aid independent learning. As Malcolm X said the speech, he showed the black people that they were ready to stand up, that they either were voting or if that didn't cut it, they were ready to fight. They showed the black people, the white people, that how far they will go for the equal rights and the civil rights.
Where our rank on this earth to be a man, to be a human being, to be respected as a human being, to be given the rights of a human being in this society, on this earth, in this day, which we intend to bring into existence by any means necessary.
Martin Luther King is the first one to come to our mind when it comes to equal rights for the African Americans. His whole nonviolence movement and his peaceful resistance were well known and acknowledged by many people. But King's triumph nor the effect of his work would have been the same without Malcolm X. Malcolm X advocated fighting the status by the use of violence and not through negotiations and love. He believed that white supremacy only could be conquered by self-defense, by any means necessary, as he said. Martin Luther King, on the other hand, preached integration and nonviolent demonstrations. Malcolm and Martin Luther King were really different from each other. Their methods and philosophies were not even close to the same. These two men had completely different backgrounds and both had a different view on life and peace, not to mention religion and race relations. King's and Malcolm's different responses to racial inequality solutions can be traced back to their early ages. The important thing to remember is that both Malcolm and Martin Luther King worked towards the same result. Even though the methods were very different, there was a common bond. They believed that it was essential for black Americans to feel the same way and get treated the same way as other individuals. Malcolm never really changed his methods, however, his view on the white people changed. Back in 1964, he broke ties with the Nation of Islam after realizing that it was filled with corruption. He then went back to Mecca on a spiritual journey where he hoped to learn about other black cultures, but that wasn't the case. His journey to Mecca showed him that the anti-white stance was too extreme. In a letter he wrote to his wife, he said, "On this pilgrimage, what I've seen, have experienced, has forced me to rearrange much of my thought patterns previously held and to toss aside some of my previous conclusions."
Black Power. Black Power is a political slogan and a name for various associated ideologies aimed at achieving self-determination for people of African descent. It is used by African Americans in the United States. It was prominent in the late 1960s and early 1970s, emphasizing racial pride and the creation of black political and cultural institutions to nurture and promote black collective interests and advance black values. The Black Movement was a political movement to achieve a form of black power and the many philosophies it contains. The movement saw various forms of activism, some violent and some peaceful, all hoping to achieve black empowerment. The Power movement also represented socialist movements, all with the general motivation of improving the standing of black people in society. Originated in the aftershock of the civil rights movement, some doubted the philosophy of the movement, begging for more radical action, taking influences from Malcolm X. The cornerstone of the movement was the Black Panther Party, a black power organization dedicated to socialism and the use of violence to achieve it. The Black Power movement developed in the criticism of the civil rights movement in the early 1960s, and over time into the 1970s, the movement grew and became more violent.